Hello, my name's Julie Williams. I'm a registered migration agent with Migration Down Under, and I'm here today to talk to you about permanent residency. Not how to apply for permanent residency, but more aimed to those that already have permanent residency and trying to advise and inform you of how you keep a hold of your permanent residency, because it's such exciting news once you are given that news either via email or a phone call that you've just been granted permanent residency. It's such a prize. You don't want, and an effort to have gone that far to gain your permanent residency, and a big expense as well. You don't want to lose it. So here's how you keep hold of it, because we're getting a lot of inquiries, especially during the pandemic, of people that have obtained permanent residency some time ago, but have struggled to enter Australia and start their lives in Australia as a permanent resident. And they're concerned that their permanent residency is soon going to expire. Now, let me explain a few things. Permanent residency is indefinite if you live and reside here in Australia. Permanent residency comes with what's called a resident return visa. And that resident return visa is automatically granted on the grant of your permanent residency. It's valid for 5 years, the resident return visa, whilst permanent residency is indefinite if you remain living and residing and working here in Australia. You don't actually have to work. You can just reside here in Australia indefinitely, and that permanent residency will continue. But if you want to travel in and out of Australia, you've got what's called the resident return visa, which is the travel facility that allows you to travel back and forth as a permanent resident and continue to enter Australia as a permanent resident. Some of you may have gained permanent residency while you're offshore, and with regards to that, you need to enter Australia within 12 months of the grant of that permanent residency so you can activate the permanent residency. And then after that, it's your choice as to when you return permanently or whether you remain permanently on that first entry. A lot of people make the mistake of coming out and activating their visa, but then life gets in the way. They've got their permanent residency for Australia, but perhaps parents are elderly, sick, needing care. Maybe you're getting married and you don't want to rush your new partner to the other side of the world as to where you are now. Or maybe you've got a job that you're really not wanting to leave right at that moment. So you're letting your permanent residency in Australia just sit. But then along comes a pandemic and you're going, what do I do now? Well, unfortunately, for those of you who have not entered Australia other than for a few days to activate it, say 5 years ago, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to show why you should maintain your permanent residency and get another resident return visa. Because that resident return visa, if you live in Australia for 2 years out of the 5, you can renew that resident return visa for another 5 years, because the resident return visa is valid for 5 years. And as I said, if you live in Australia for 2 years, you can continue to renew that every 5 years. It's not accumulatively, it's not consecutively, it's accumulatively. So you don't have to live consecutively for 2 years. It can be a couple of months here, it can be 6 months there, as long as it adds up to 2 years in those 5 years. If it doesn't, then you might be able to get a new resident return visa, but only valid for 12 months. And that will enable you to return to Australia on that resident return visa and continue to reside here on a permanent basis. The other alternative, if you are living in Australia and you've lived here for 4 years, you can apply for citizenship, and then you never have to worry about that resident return visa again. And you have the flexibility of where you choose to live anywhere in the world. So if something comes up, whether it's a job offer, whether it's family needs, then you don't have to worry about leaving Australia for any particular time if you've got your Australian citizenship. So permanent residency, look, it's such a pathway to gain it for many of you. It costs a lot of money. It's a lot of time, effort, energy going into gaining that permanent residency. So just be careful. You don't want to lose it. So, especially in times of the pandemic, it's really highlighted to people how important it is to have that option of permanent residency in another country, especially Australia. So just be aware, if you are overseas and you do obtain permanent residency, you do need to show that you've got close personal and business ties here to us in Australia to maintain that 5-year resident return travel facility. So don't delay. If you do get permanent residency, do make the move and remain working here in Australia, because there's so many opportunities. You've been sponsored because of your skill set, usually. That's mainly why people apply independently. It's usually through your skill set, and it's because Australia is, in dire need for that particular skill. So the job opportunities are available. So don't do yourselves a favour. Don't waste that permanent residency. Don't lose it, and continue to live here for a minimum of 2 out of the 5 years to maintain that permanent residency.